These poor big black and white cows have been genetically bred again and again and again for one purpose, yield. But they'll be dead by the time they're 6 or 7. How the heck will this country survive if we're importing 60% of food? We've lost so many farmers, so much knowledge, so much wisdom in pursuit of the corporate profit.
Hi, my name's Emma Dunwell. Welcome to a special edition of the Resistance Podcast. Today we are in Exeter at Goffin Land Farms, and I am here with Marianne, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yep, I've been a tenant farmer in South Oxfordshire, where there is virtually no proper food grown for, good God, nearly 30 years now. In that time, I've been watching the food system, thinking about it, researching health, because we've spent everything we've owned understanding health and how health at our level impacts the bigger level. And, 25 years ago, I realized we needed system food change, but as a tenant farmer, I couldn't see how I could actually effect that change. However, through the lens of the last 4 years, I still didn't think it was possible, but as time's gone on, I've seen this chink and we're working towards it.
So what have you been doing over the last 4 years to work towards your goal?
Well, it's been a little bit synchronistic, shall we say. Just follow the passion, follow what you wanted to learn. And, we were already doing regenerative agriculture, as some would say, through our beef. I bought something called holistic management to the UK, which is all about how you manage your animals and your land in synchronous harmony with one another. And in that time, we've made tremendous strides going forward on our grassland. Mm-hmm. And we've also been making our own compost. We've been trying to find enough time to make our own market garden viable. And to that end, I tried some no-dig gardening in 2021, which I was absolutely amazed at. But on the back of that, someone approached me and said, would I take over their small food co-op? Mm-hmm. Which I did, but I couldn't grow and do. And this evolved through a vegetable box scheme at the end of lockdown, the loss of custom, which has been seen across the country, where a lot of people flocked to the small farmers and producers during lockdown. As lockdown was released, we lost that custom again. And I mirrored that, my sales mirrored that to the point I was prepared to give up. But a small amount of my core customers said, we don't want to lose what you're doing. How can we persuade you to keep going? And knowing a system in the state known as food co-ops, very much heralded by a superb farmer, and I recommend anyone look at his YouTube channel or videos. The name of the guy is Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm. He's actually been asked to be advisor to the new Trump administration on food and growing, because he is an absolute shining light into what is possible with food production. And so I said, okay, let's have a go at this. And for 9 months, I threw myself into that, and it was very, very successful. However, things didn't go quite the way to plan. On the back of that, Food for Change was born, again, to help more co-ops go forward. Again, that evolved, and eventually I came back to having my own shop, full shop online. I'm currently in a trial. I'm selling, we're in Oxfordshire. There's very, very little vegetable grown, very little fruit now grown. In fact, I don't believe Oxfordshire produces more than 2% of the food actually eaten. And this is multiplied throughout the home counties, I believe. So I think we're in a very, very fragile situation, especially with the geopolitics of the world, with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East. We are, I dare say it, we are on the brink of another world war. We know what happened in World War II and the food shortages, and it will be much, much worse now. The latest data someone came out with is that we import 60%. how the heck will this country survive if we're importing 60% of food? So my current shop, which is vitalityfarm.co.uk, is still in its trial phase. It's why I'm offering 15% discount, basically, so I get a chance to screw up without too much damage. I've already got interest from another farm to be able to replicate what I'm doing. And I think it is very, very replicatable. What we found out through the whole Food for Change arc is that more and more people do not want to go to the supermarkets. They do not want to empower the supermarkets. They don't want to pay the corporate shareholders. They are starting to realize that their money can be better used through the local, through the small, through the independent, and going back to the farmers. So I've watched over the last 4 years. I have listened for someone with more, let me say, power or influence than a tiny peasant farmer can have, to say, look, here's another way, another possibility. And I've yet to hear it. So I've realized we, the farmers, are the only way this is going to change, with the support of people that want to support us. We need that direct connection. So that's why I'm here.
So what can the average person do? Because, I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit before when we were speaking earlier on, that the main issue with buying organic, buying local, is some people just simply can't afford it, just even though they would love to. Is there any way for people to get around that?
Okay, so at the moment, I've set my website up. I've got over 600 lines on there, all organic. It's taken me months to do that. I desperately want to get non-organic on there because I understand that people want to help support this movement. Mm-hmm. But there was, what I was finding over this last few years' journey is that people think when I'm talking about local food, they're thinking it's already there. You cannot supply what there is not available. So when I say, non-organic food, it's going to come from where I can get it, because I can't get it from where it's not. If I can sell enough, I can then pay someone to grow for us. I'm currently not certified organic, although we manage everything organically, in fact, beyond organic. The big caveat I have is, how can I employ someone in the most expensive part of real estate in the world, which Oxfordshire is a part of? So this is how we've got to dial back on the systems and start to find the solutions. How can I afford to pay someone? And the answer is by diversifying what I'm selling. If people don't want to go to the supermarket, someone's going to supply what the supermarkets supply, so why not be me? If that profit means I can pay someone, we're going to start regenerating our food production. And it isn't just one farm. It's got to be a lot more farms that realise, actually, I'm selling veg, I'm selling eggs, I'm selling meat, but I could actually sell coffee, tea, jam, pasta. In fact, I even hate to say it, toilet rolls. We can sell toilet rolls. So let's do it, because that way we're able to put the resources through finance back into the farmers that can grow more.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great. And if everyone was buying that way, I think everyone would be much healthier and happier. As well as the farmers themselves, I think that there is a big shift going from supermarket to local produce within the public population as well. I mean, the whole argument over Bovea, do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Simply, don't fix what ain't broke. Okay, I've got a really direct answer for that. So when we brought holistic management to the UK, I'd actually heard of Alan Savory, I'd seen his TED talk, but I didn't know very much about the whole animal and land management. In the 10 years since then, we've got, most of our land is flood meadow, which after a flood, we have very little productivity. We're on the neck of the Thames Basin, it knocks our grass for six. In 3 years, without a flood, I hasten to add, we quadrupled our grass productivity. However, flood still knocked it back. And over the time, last year, for the first time, we had a flood event similar to the one before we started this, and we had no loss in productivity. In fact, other farmers were saying, oh, we've got no grass. And we're going, we've got grass. And so this year we're going to have a 10-year soil analysis done. And I believe we could have quadrupled our carbon element.
Wow.
Because where carbon goes, nutrients flow and the whole ecosystem upscales. That's a subject for another day. But if more farmers, such as the farmers that are saying, oh, we need to reduce methane, if they were actually sequestering carbon, they wouldn't have to be worrying about methane in the first place. And they'd be getting a lot more health into the environment, a whole lot of health into the cattle. And then they'll say, oh, well, we can't do it because we need the input. One of the dairy farms, actually my daughter worked on, she was saying that the cows were being bought what we call cake or soya into the diet from places like Brazil. And I think they were talking about 60% protein. That's obscene. They're talking about the productivity through the cow as opposed to the productivity from the land. If they took the pressure off the cows, dialed back their genetics, they could get out of the land actually more productivity and more profit. But because our society has been so focused on productivity, the animals suffer, the people suffer, the land suffers, everything suffers. We need to dial it back and start from the bottom again.
And with the Beauvais argument, have you had any pressures for any additives or specific fertilizers at all?
I'm very, very glad to say we're a hopeless cause from that side of it. Having spent 25 years and every penny that we've earned on researching health, there is no way on earth I'd even consider it. So I think it just doesn't come across our sphere of consciousness anymore.
Yeah.
Working like that.
Do you think that everything that's going on with land grabbing, inheritance tax, have you come into any contest with that?
Okay, well, bear in mind we're tenants, so inheritance tax will never be an issue.
Right, okay.
It's a very, very complex thing we're up against. The bottom line is, in the 60 years I've been around, I'm going to talk about my home village. When I was a child, still at school, there was milk produced in the area, eggs, bacon, pork, beef, lamb, vegetables, potatoes. Even one of our farmers grew sunflowers. We had a huge diversity of food being grown. Now all there is wheat and rape. Yeah. Neither of which do I recommend anyone have, especially if the rapeseed is refined. We need to dial it back. We've lost so many farmers, so much knowledge, so much wisdom in pursuit of the corporate profit. I can't tell you how many farmers we have lost within that area off the top of my head, but I think probably 60, 70, 80%.
Do you think that this is a purposeful move by the government over years, like kind of a plan to squeeze us all into either buying genetically modified food at this point, that's basically what it is, or breaking the bank to try and buy organic?
I don't think the government per se is the problem, but I think the corporate masters are completely complicit. When you look at health, you look at human health, you go down, what people say is the rabbit hole. The more you go into human health, the more you realize that the big pharmaceutical companies who actually own the big agrochemical companies are one and the same. Yeah. The more nutrition, the more damage they do to the environment, both our inner and our external, the more profit they make. A sick person is a profitable person.
Yeah.
The fact is, if we carry on the way we're going, I don't believe climate change, but I do know we've wrecked our environment. The good thing is, with enough support, the farmers can undo the damage we've done. Yeah. But not with the narrative that's currently out there.
Yeah, no, you have to have the support and you have to be allowed to do so. And I think it's interesting that you touch on climate change because it seems very purposeful and it seems that it's all in the pursuit of climate efficiency, net zero.
I think it is being used as a narrative, yes. Because what I said about our journey with our grassland, the data I'm picking up on there to say the amount of carbon we will have sequestered comes from research study of Paige Stanley and Jason Roundtree of Michigan State University, who I think it was up to 2012, they did a 4-year study producing beef, and you can find it easily online, about how much beef they produce over the period, but also on the soils and how much carbon they sequestered over that 4-year period. So that is how much I am absolutely sure, through what I'm seeing on our recovery, with the resilience, should I say, in our land, I know we have sequestered significant amounts. Yeah. But the problem is that narrative doesn't support the corporate interests. It supports the farmers, which supports us as a nation. Yeah. And until they get back to the farmers are the backbone of tomorrow, and that is a huge thing because farmers are our guardians of tomorrow, but they don't know it yet. That's the problem.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that them taking private jets everywhere is probably making a bit of a bigger impact than, a few cow burps here and there, or a few like Londoners driving down the road just trying to get to work.
Yeah, their jets won't have the ability to sequester the methane out of, which the soil does have. So yes, hypocrisy through and through.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. So if all goes well, where do you see yourself with your produce in, let's say, the next few years' time? What would be your idea of absolute success with this?
This coming year, we're hoping to get the second soil analysis done. On the back of that, we will know pretty empirically how much carbon we've sequestered. Now, whilst I don't really agree with the carbon narrative, as a tenant farmer, there's a good chance I can sell the carbon credits that I've actually physically produced in the last 10 years.
That's great.
If we can do that, it will allow us as farmers to actually buy a piece of freehold, because we have no freehold now because of our investment in the learning process. If we can buy a small piece of land, we can actually extend our holding. We can give ourselves more security, more resiliency. We currently rent 95 acres, but I've got another 200 or 300 in my sights if we could get this small holding that we're after. But there is no point in going after any more land because we have such a small percentage above flood level. It's just a nightmare too much. But with freehold, it will enable us to go forward. And the selling of produce is an engine of being able to take us forward with resiliency. We use the term resource conversion. So if we take the resource of the customer base that wants to support us through, in old speak, profit, but it will enable us to know that, okay, we've got X amount of money coming in every month so that we can now work more on the farm, we can produce more, to then sell more, and we are the first engine of regeneration. Yeah. There's us.
Well, that'd be amazing. Do you worry at all that in the coming years, buying and obtaining land could become more difficult?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, when you think around me, large blocks of land are selling at £20,000 an acre for what I consider dead arable land. Yeah. That is totally divorced from its productive capacity. At some point, that has to reset. The average house around me is about £350,000. How can I employ someone that needs to rent a house that was going to cost that money? I mean, land, farm, real estate is just exorbitant by reasonable standards. Yeah. If that were to come down, it will be a game changer. So in answer to your question, land has been outside our purse for a long time. It's going to take a lot of partnerships. There has been talk in my sphere of what we called regenerative land partnerships, which means people that want to, should we say, invest in something solid and something that they know will be there for the future. Yep. Without the expectation that they have to generate 2%, 5%, 10%. They're doing it because they want to do the right thing. And in the hands of the right farmers, it will produce the other outcomes that we need. We need the water cycle working again. We need the nutrient back in the soil. We need the biodiversity back. We need everything working, and it's not. These farmers are key, but as a tenant, I'm getting fed up of the master always being the landlord, never knowing quite what tomorrow will bring, because you can't take the long-term view when you're a tenant. You need these partnerships that have this long-term view.
Defiance Records brings the best music from the freedom movement. From Ramise's Never Give Up and Mad Mix's You're So Right, available as a double A-side on Defiance, to Raw Milk Conspiracy bringing back purpose to music with their latest single This Is England 2024 and their brilliant debut Misinformation Whore, available on Defiance Records. Have you come up, or do you expect to come up against any issues with pollution? And when I say pollution, I don't mean, climate change pollution. I mean, there are a lot of issues with our land in this country because of how much we've sprayed into our skies, how much we've sprayed into the soil. Has that become an issue for you at all?
I know there are a lot of people out there that are not aware of both sides of the equation. But it was 2 years ago, June 2023, there was a storm came up from the English Channel. And I know a lot of people that had asthma or something like that, and I lost 3 head of my livestock that week. Really well, healthy animals that were just dead. And you go, what's this? Well, if I hadn't have known about what was going on, and it was mirrored in the human side of things, there was this respiratory thing. Just that week. It was just that week this happened. No other time. So am I worried? Yes. And it's not just that side of it. We're on the neck of the Thames Basin. When it floods in the Thames Valley, we will flood. You think about what's going down the toilet, what's being sprayed on the land, it will end up on our land. So our resiliency is phenomenal in face of not just the weight of water in the flood, but also the chemical input that probably isn't that good for us.
Do you think that once the government or the corporates have kind of glommed on to all the farms that they can get their hands on and shove them with inheritance tax and Bovea and all these different types of things, do you think that they will start coming for the independent farms?
I think they will struggle to.
Yeah.
I think they will struggle to. When that comes around, I think the smaller farm will have gained the resilience needed. Just because we have to. To stay alive, you have to learn to be resilient. And there is a lot more information out there now, especially within the regenerative agriculture movement. So if we can become more resilient, we can actually be the light holder for tomorrow. I know so many of the best regenerative farmers around the world. I'm very, very fortunate because of the network I'm part of. Guy in Australia, phenomenal guy by the name of Colin Seiss. He actually coined the pasture cropping movement, which is whereby he grazes his sheep, and then at the end of the season he manages the sheep in a particular way, and he drills his corn directly into his grassland. In so doing, he significantly increases productivity. Now, I make the point of saying it's in Australia because they have a very different grass climate and everything else. But I mention it as one way.
Yeah.
In this country, there's more heritage grain now being grown. I wish there was a lot more because it's far more digestible than the modern grain. In fact, I've heard stories of people that cannot eat wheat, able to eat sourdough bread made with proper heritage grain. And I make a point of saying heritage grain that's unadulterated.
So could you tell us the difference between heritage and modern grain?
Okay, I'm going to nod to John Letts here. He is the father of this. I heard someone speak that he was archaeobotanist, and he's been doing this for 25, 30
That's a
years.
mouthful.
Yeah. The story comes that he was an archaeobotanist in Oxford, and a thatcher bought him a shoebox full of corn heads from a roof that I believe were carbon dated about the 16th century.
Oh, wow.
And he grew them up. He harvested them. He grew them up. And yeah, his grain is now available through, well, you'll have to look it up, but heritage grain, true heritage grain. And the way he works is year one, they'll power harrow, which is a minimum till thing. He'll seed into it, and he just lets it grow. And you've got such a diversity of grains that stand our head high. You don't get anywhere near the yield. So commercial yield of modern grain is about 4 tons to the acre if you're lucky. His, I believe, is about 800 kilos to the acre. However, you have straw that is cut in a particular way and left over the winter, and then the following year they just sow back into it or drill back into it. That's it. That's all you do. No chemical, no spray, no nothing. The grain that is yielded can go on to be milled, and I know this particular bakery in Oxford has been producing a sourdough that people have come back and said, my so-and-so and so couldn't eat bread, couldn't eat wheat, but they can eat this.
I'm really curious about that because my mom is celiac and she can't eat wheat or gluten, so I think I might have to tell her about that.
Yeah, I'm not saying celiacs can do it, but it gives you an idea. The genetic diversity. I think someone said one variety within this, and there are many, has 500 times the genetic diversity of a modern grain.
Yeah.
Or I think it was actually all modern grains.
Wow.
So this is how much genetic diversity is lost, and we need to bring it back.
Well, and that also goes to show just how much the foods that we have changed in the last few decades. I mean, I remember the first time I tried raw milk. And I had it with a bowl of Cocoa Pops, which, yes, I know Cocoa Pops probably not the best. But I had it, and all of a sudden I felt very nostalgic. I was like, this is exactly how Cocoa Pops tasted when I was like really small. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that just goes to show, what have they done to the milk since I've been younger? How much has that changed? I mean, same with the butter. We got farm butter, and my mom doesn't particularly like it. But then that makes you question, okay, so what do they put in supermarket butter that makes it taste like that?
It's not so much what they put in it, it's how they forced the milk production through the cow.
Right.
I mean, it's hideous to think cows can produce 25, 30, even 40 litres of milk a day. These poor big black and white cows have been genetically bred again and again and again for one purpose, yield. But they'll be dead by the time they're 6 or 7.
Oh, wow.
But you take, and I'm going to specify Channel Island breeds. I'm sure there are other breeds, but specifically Channel Island, they produce an incredibly dense milk, especially if they're grown just on grass. Grass, and more grass. It's a beautiful milk. They won't be yielding anything like that. They may be yielding, if you're lucky, 15, 20 litres a day would be considered huge. And I even know a lot of farmers now are going on a once-a-day milking, keeping the calf on the cow, the way it was intended to be. And when they do that, you're talking 5 litres of milk a day. But the milk is a totally different calibre.
Yeah.
You know, I've had this conversation with many people. What price of milk? How do you value a litre of milk that is caring for its offspring, caring for the environment, caring for you, versus something that is a production line that is just white water?
White water, that's what my mom calls supermarket milk. So obviously this event is for food, farming and security.
Yep.
How secure do you think we are with self-sustaining our food in this country?
We, need food security, and I prefer the word food sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, and something that is never touched upon in any of the research, is the quality of food and its freshness. Where is the food coming from? How far has it travelled? How long is it since it was part of the living matrix? How does that affect its quality when we eat it? There is very little work done in that sphere. In fact, it was one of the things originally I would love to have done, but I have one life. So where I am in South Oxfordshire, as I alluded to before, we had all sorts of growers around us, and now there is just arable land. We feed, if we are lucky, in our market town, a town that used to vie with London as capital of the UK, or England rather, should I say, we feed maybe, if we're very, very lucky, 2% of the population. Everything else is imported. Look at the whole discussion around the 15-minute cities. That's only possible through commodity production. Oxford, for example, they have more farmers' markets. But how far is that food coming from into the markets? And I can virtually guarantee you the majority of food is commodity production from an hour and a half away, let alone 15 minutes away. This is the insanity. They say the meaning of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Well, they're expecting to do something different. This is, as I say, perhaps it is part of the 2030 agenda. I do not even want to think about it. But I do know we need oodles more people growing real food. And the backbone of real food is vegetable. And sorry to the vegans out there, we need a lot more animals back on the land. Animals that can be grown sustainably, sentiently, with love, with care, with knowledge, and how they can be brought back into the rotation to give us more nutrient density in the soil, more resiliency in the soil, more biodiversity.
Yeah.
More diversity within the local economy, because ultimately the economy starts with the land. Without land, we have nothing.
That's a really good point, actually. And it reminded me of, I did a podcast not too long ago with Rachel. She's a fitness coach and she's a carnivore diet. And she actually said the most vegan thing that you can do is eat meat. It's the most sustainable. It's actually the friendliest to the species that you are eating.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Totally.
Yeah.
But you have to really get down and dirty and know the farmer and know who they are and how they work. I mean, we absolutely adore our animals, and I'd love to give you a little bit of recent footage of my daughter, my 4-month-old granddaughter, in with the cows the other day, and one of our favourites comes up and literally licks the baby.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
This is what being involved and really caring. Yes, we know ultimately we're going to produce something that will have to die, but we all die.
Yeah.
I would rather die with dignity than being hunted and chased and killed, which is nature. We need to bring sentiency back into the production. We need to bring care and, yes, love, because the animals know it. They know if you care.
Yeah.
So we need a lot more of that. The care coming through the animals, through the plants, through the soil, through the whole ecosystem. If we can do that, then we can make meat eating more sentient, which I know some people go out there, yes, but it's still killing.
It's killing whatever you do.
Yes, but
we have to kill
there's still
to live.
Death.
Yeah.
There is still death. That's the only thing we know about life, is there will be death. The best we can do is make it a good life and an even better death if that is possible.
Yeah. So I think we touched upon this earlier again, off camera probably. We were talking about what actually is food. Because obviously if we're talking about the quality of food and then you go into the supermarket and you see tins of, I mean, you can get anything tinned. And it does make you question, is that even real food?
It's diversity for our diet, but I would say the backbone of it still needs to be fresh.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with vegetable because that's what we can take from the earth pretty quickly, take it out of the earth, wash it, cook it, or just eat it. There is a lot of people say, yes, it needs to be cooked. I mean, that's the whole diet conversation for another day. But the nearer we get it to the living matrix on the vegetable side of things, the healthier it's going to be, especially if we know it comes from nutrient-dense, healthy soil. Then you can add the other stuff in. But the one thing we're finding with the people that have been buying from us is they say they waste so much less. They're paying, okay, at the moment everything I have is organic. I hope over the next month or so I will start to bring non-organic in, because I appreciate not everyone can afford organic.
Yeah.
I do understand that. Whilst we need to all be working organically, we have to live in a real world.
Yeah. But the money still goes back into the local.
That's the point. If we can take and allow you to use what we're doing, to make the difference. Once upon a time, organic was just a word. Then it became a movement. And those early organic adopters couldn't buy organic this and organic that from somewhere. It had to be what it is. And this is what we're saying. We need to be more pragmatic and open to how we can change the system.
Yeah.
And I make no bones, what I'm doing is a trial. I'm not afraid to fail anymore. We would not have a light bulb if Edison hadn't failed 1,000 times. And this is how I feel. We've got to try to make the difference.
Yeah. I mean, it calls into question what organic really is, because, I mean, again, on the Carnivore podcast, I think Rachel touched upon that if a mass production farm, so farms typically owned by supermarket chains and things like that, if they attempt to grow a crop organically and it fails, they can then try again using pesticides, but they can still use the organic label because they tried once.
Okay, you're talking about derogations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whether it's like when I'm speaking to someone such as yourself, it already feels so much more trustworthy. I mean, so I'm looking at all the things you've got laid out. I'm taking a bag full home. I swear, I am going home with so much of that. It all looks delicious, and like there's so much of a variety as well.
Now let's just caveat that there isn't much of that that's local. Not to me, anyway.
Yeah.
Some of this will actually have come from down the West Country.
Yeah.
Just because there is none around me. I mean, there is none around me that I can buy. So it comes back to the problem. No local production.
Yeah.
And one day, my dream is that my website will be full of produce that will immediately link to a producer that is local, that you, being a local person, will already know.
Yeah.
That's how it's got to go. But if we could do it in a decade, it would be amazing. But let's be realistic. We'll be lucky if we can do it in 2.
Yeah. Where can people find your shop?
Okay. At the moment, we're just online. It's vitalityfarm.co.uk, and Vitality Farm has always been the name of our little farm because we wanted a name to aspire to. We're in a trial phase until later in the spring. So if your order is if you're national, if you can put an order of £50 in, you'll attract 15% discount, which is because we're learning the system, we're learning what you want, we're learning the bugs. I mean, I had a huge problem with our courier last week, and I'm so glad we didn't have 100 orders. But that's what it's about. We need you to be part of the trial so we can scale up, so we can learn the problems before we hand it over to other farmers, which is ultimately what I want to do. We have got access to thousands of, shall we just say, general lines, everything from food through to your toilet rolls, to your cosmetics, to everything.
Cosmetics as well?
Yeah, there's cosmetics on there. Not, as you can tell, but supplements is another one. There's some really high quality supplements.
And these are all made or checked and okayed by yourself?
Now, there's me. If anyone's out there and is looking for a job, I would love someone to go, actually, I can verify that. Because ultimately, what Vitality Farm is doing, we're setting up as a not-for-profit enterprise, as a co-op, so that all the profit can go back to the farmers one way or another. We're not there yet. And so if you're a farmer out there and you're hearing this is going to be farmer-based, director, trustee, board member based. It has to be, because farmers have to be placed back in control of the entire system. Mm-hmm. When you talk to enough farmers, you'll realise the problem with government through DEFRA is because there are too many people that have never farmed, don't understand, and don't have any skin in the game. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more people with skin into the game, into the management of the future. They have to understand the soil. They have to understand health. They have to understand that we are the keys to a healthy tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you had a specific message that you'd like to say to our audience, but I think that was perfect.
Super.
Thank you so much for giving me some of your time. It's been
Pleasure.
wonderful speaking to you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. For more exclusive behind-the-scenes content, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon. It really helps us cover the cost of any live streams, events, protests, or anything that we do. You'll also be seeing any behind-the-scenes footage and anything that we might be doing with Defiance Records.
Resistance GB's new series, 1,000 Words, has me, portrait artist Jake Fern, talking to some of the key figures in the movement. Half my brain concentrating on having a conversation, and the other half on making a painting. Do I succeed at either? You be the judge.